So before I begin, I know I have a lot of smart people on the line, so I should probably caveat that the mistakes here we're going to talk about aren't necessarily big, huge, gratuitous mistakes, but rather as we talk to prospects and clients, what we find is people make the mistake of doing 80% right but missing the last 20%. And so as I go through these, you'll hear me focus on a lot of things. You're probably going, yeah, I'm doing that. Oh, hopefully we get that last 20% that maybe you didn't consider. So real quick, we're going to be a pretty brief webinar, probably be about 20, 30 minutes. I want to jump into a sales enablement definition just so we're all baselined. We'll talk a little bit about common problems, and then we're just going to dive into the five biggest mistakes that we see. So sales enablement. I have a couple definitions here. The first one I'm showing a little bit lengthy from Forrester, and I won't read it to all of you, but I highlighted a key point there. And with sales enablement, we're trying to help a human being, a salesperson, have a valuable conversation. Now, there's a lot of things behind that. There's tools, there's processes, there's content to help people, but ultimately what you're trying to do is help a salesperson have a good conversation so they can move a sale forward and obviously ultimately close it. IDC recently had a quote here with some advice on saying that the delivery of the right information to the right person at the right time is what people should focus on, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, but I think when people read a statement like that and they hear right information, they immediately think marketing, sales and marketing content. And so for the purpose of this webinar, and myself being a simple marketing guy, I kind of distilled it down to sales enablement is really the processes, the tools, and the coaching. And I have coaching there in capital letters because I think oftentimes that's something that's missed. And if you look at some statistics and as we talk to people, yeah, I need to do more coaching. I don't have enough time. My sales managers are overwhelmed. So it's the processes, the tools, and tools can be systems, it can be content. There's a lot of things that I throw in there. And coaching, ultimately to help salespeople perform better. And by performing better, it is sell more. So that's what I'm talking about when we talk about sales enablement and we get into the mistakes. Before I get into the mistakes, though, here are common problems, and I'm sure most of you online have seen statistics like this in some way, shape, or form from some analysts. So we picked a couple here that are common that we see. One is content problem. My reps can't find it. They spend too much time looking for it. But because they can't find it and because they're overworked, they don't have enough time, so they don't come prepared for meetings. I have tons of marketing content, only a fraction is used, and I don't know which fraction is used. And then, I think the serious decisions quote down there in the bottom left-hand corner is the most important one, though, and one that as we go through the mistakes, I'd encourage you to think about, because the number one reason sellers misquote is because they can't articulate value. And that's back to my sales enablement definition of perform. So how do we help the sales rep perform better? And as we get into some of the common mistakes, some of the common solutions that people implement, I think sometimes miss the fact that that's ultimately what you're trying to do. So with that brief setup, let's jump into the 5 common mistakes.
Okay, five mistakes that we often see. First is, hey, I have a sales enablement problem. I'm going to attack it as a content problem. I know about a third of my content is used, 2/3 is not. So we must have a content problem, right? And oftentimes we have too many pieces. We have fragmented repositories, multiple divisions have multiple tools. My sellers can't find it. Worst case, they just wing it and they don't use any content at all. Best case is they're constantly on the phone calling marketing and saying, hey, where's that case study? Where's that presentation? Common solution that we see people tackle this with then is, all right, we're going to perform a content audit. We're going to consolidate all of our repositories down to as close to one as we possibly can get. and then we'll tag the content to make it super easy for sales to do. But that tagging is all done from a marketing point of view. And although marketing probably has a decent idea what sales needs, not always. I mean, you don't know. What you really want to know is how do you get into the seller's mind to understand how they search for content when they're out in the field. And so oftentimes the reason, although good intentions, it doesn't work is you create a content graveyard, because searching for content doesn't improve if the seller doesn't know what to search for, or if they don't know how you tagged it. And also remember, content doesn't sell, people do. So even if they find the content, can they articulate your value? Can they deliver your value proposition? Can they differentiate versus your competition? And it really comes down to how do you help your sellers articulate value so that they're selling and differentiating your product and not just showing your prospects a price list. And so key considerations as you're tackling this problem is, are you providing the right amount of coaching alongside the content? So great, they found the perfect case study for their sales situation. Can they position it? Can they position you? Can they differentiate versus the competition? Even better is, can you get the exact right piece of perfect content into the seller's hands exactly when they need it, and eliminate the search altogether? So prescriptively recommend the content based on the selling situation. And then the other piece is you need to help sellers engage, or you need to engage with your sales teams early to create content that helps them in selling conversations. And oftentimes when people sit down with sales, they find very quickly they have lots of things for early in the sales stages, but as you get further along in the deal, they don't have nearly as much content as they should have. So that sales and marketing alignment is super important. The second mistake that we see people often make is, all right, I know I have the fragmented repositories, I got sales calling marketing all the time with ad hoc requests because they can't find content. So I'm going to implement a technology solution. Maybe we're going to do this awesome sales portal, and it will just make everything perfect. And I'm sure many of you in the marketing world can relate to the Dilbert cartoon there, where they're on the road to a sales conversation, and the sales guy goes, okay, so tell me about the product. And he was the marketing guy, kind of slapping yourself on the forehead and go, we're 5 minutes from the meeting and this guy doesn't know the basics of the product. And so you want to be confident that that salesperson, when he's not in the car with someone helping him, that he has the right content, but he also has all of the coaching and talking points to sell value. And so common solution to solving this type of problem is we're going to consolidate the content, we're going to use technology. Like I said, sales portals are very, very often the solution here. We're going to have a one-stop shop for sellers. It will save them a ton of time because they'll only have to go to one place, and it's going to save marketing a ton of time because I only have one place to put my content, and sellers will just be able to find it. But considerations here is, you don't forget sales and marketing alignment. I've said this in the first one. If you don't have content for all sales stages, sellers are either going to make it up, or in the worst case, they're just not going to be able to articulate your value and your message and value prop. And don't forget, 2/3 of marketing content isn't used not just because they can't find it, but because it's not the right kind of content that they need. Sometimes they can find things, they can't find the thing that they want. So a sales portal that a seller can go to but doesn't have the right content doesn't help them either. So, key considerations, you want to make sure that you're creating content that's going to help aid sales conversations, which means you need to engage with sales and understand what the selling conversations look like. And then the other piece is you need to do a good audit and make sure you have things for later stages in the sales cycle, not just the early prospecting stages. Third mistake is oftentimes we see technology still being bought by marketing, even though the goal of it is to help improve sales. And I'm a marketer myself, so I can say this. We get enamored with all of these bells and whistles. And so You know, you're sitting there going, geez, I have 2/3 of my content not being used, but I don't know why. I don't know which 2/3. My CFO is constantly bugging me about ROI and what am I getting out of this. And so I want to show that I'm adding value to the organization. So as a marketer, it's kind of like, let me justify how wonderful I am. And so oftentimes when a marketer is evaluating technology, start doing the requirements, it becomes from a marketing-centric point of view and a management reporting point of view. So things like pretty charts and ad hoc reporting and all sorts of bells and whistles become really enticing as a marketer because now I can show my value. Here's the problem though. Reports don't improve sales. In fact, oftentimes, the reports will improve your ability to admire the problem, but if you need behavior change or you need process change or you're lacking the right content for the right sales stage, those tools and those reports aren't going to help you. And you got to be careful too that if you get all these beautiful charts and things like that, that it doesn't turn into great. Now I can even provide more oversight to my sales team and try to tell them what to do. And I think any of you that support sales teams know that sales teams typically hate the CRM and then even more tools that allow management to micromanage them as opposed to selling will do nothing but drive them nuts. So resist the urge to micromanage your sales teams with lots of reports. So the key considerations when you're looking at tackling this problem is start with the seller first. Number one, how am I going to improve their performance? Number two, does it fit into their daily workflow? And by daily workflow, what I'm talking about there is do not give them another login, another portal, another place to go, because behavior change, especially with salespeople, is very, very difficult. So if they're already in a CRM and you're going to implement a technology solution, use a technology solution that integrates into the CRM so they don't have to go anywhere else. And really, really make sure if you're a marketer evaluating the technology that you're doing it from a sales-centric point of view, which probably means you need a salesperson on your evaluation and buying team. Don't assume you know what they need. Mistake number 4, I'm going to save sellers time. So I have marketing content's hard to find, it's not quite the right content. Sales spends too much time searching and creating their own content. And so I go in and I'm going to create a solution, I'm going to save them time. If I can only give them back 2 to 3 hours a day, think about how much more productive they'll be and how much more they'll sell. So you do something like another, sales portal, content repository, consolidation. Maybe even you look at tools that allow sales reps to customize their own presentations, so they can do whatever they want from a core presentation. And all of that may sound, you may be sitting there going, well, Brian, that all makes perfect sense. Yeah, of course I want to save time, and I agree. You do want to save sellers time. But I think the key consideration here is that remember, time does not equal performance. So if you give salespeople 2 to 3 hours a week back, are they better salespeople? And the answer is probably not. So think about you absolutely should help save your sales team's time. But now think about the skills. So are you delivering coaching alongside of the content? Are you delivering refresher knowledge? You probably did a great job of onboarding your new reps. Well, what are you doing to reinforce the key points that you trained them on 60, 90 days out, 6 months out? Same with your product launches. That's great. You did a 1-hour product launch training presentation. 60, 90 days out, what are you doing to make sure that they can still articulate that value proposition and they haven't forgotten everything? So by all means, save your sales team's time, but don't assume saving time by itself makes them better salespeople. There's a lot in terms of coaching and reinforcement training that you need to do to make them better salespeople. All right. Mistake number 5 is on the measurement side, and people will measure things on like efficiency versus performance, and I'll talk a little bit about what I mean by that. But the common sales enablement statistics we had on the slides earlier, 70% of their time is doing things other than selling. They can't find the content. Hardly any of my content is used, and so it'll come up with a solution. Maybe it's process, maybe it's technology, and then you as a marketer or sales enablement person start measuring things like time saved, content reduced, and content used. Which you sit there and go, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But here's the problem with that is that you're really looking at the tip of the iceberg. Efficiency, like cost reductions and time savings, is definitely good. I mean, if you have inefficiencies, you want to get rid of it, right? But you're only reducing the cost part of it. It doesn't tell you about, well, what am I doing to increase sales? And so in your measurement, up front, before you start a new program, a new process, implement a new technology tool, I would really encourage you to set a baseline that measure things like rep performance. So maybe you do it based on revenue per rep, time to quota, if you're measuring an onboard program, whatever it may be to measure performance, but then look and see if your tool or your process or program has a direct correlation to whatever that top line revenue generating performance goal is. It's great that you reduce content and you're no longer wasting money on unneeded marketing content, but you need top line growth along with cost savings to really make an impact on the business. So, in summary, I think there's a couple key themes that run through all 5 of these mistakes. Is the salespeople need to be your focus, and better sellers means better sales. So by all means, reduce efficiency and waste, but if that's all you're doing, you're back to the tip of the iceberg and you're not tackling the entire problem. The processes, the tools, and the technology are simply a means to an end. I think with anything you tackle with, you need to have an objective. And again, I encourage you to measure a baseline that is performance-oriented, implement your tool or process or technology, and then success is whether I made an impact on the business. Anything you do, if sales and marketing aren't aligned, you will likely fail. If any of you tried to implement a system and then ask the sales team to use it after you implement it, you know what I'm talking about. If sales management isn't, you're going to implement a new technology tool and sales management isn't bought in from day one, you probably are going to fail. So start with that alignment first, and then again measure on the ultimate goal. And one of the easy ways to get, if you've struggled to get sales management aligned to some of your initiatives, if you can go and say, hey, we think by doing this we're going to increase sales by X%, I guarantee you will get the ear of your vice president of sales. There's no sales manager that doesn't want to increase sales. So think of it in those terms. And by the way, it helps with your CFO too when you're asking for more money for more tools or more marketing or whatever it may be. Ultimately, I think this Dr. Grady quote is really good, is that whatever you do needs to be easy. We talked about fitting into the salesperson's workflow so that they will actually use the solution that you choose and end up using the content that you deliver. So with that, I want to thank you for attending. We have a variety of resources around sales enablement technologies. We even have a technology evaluation checklist. You can find it on the resources section in our webpage, so I encourage you to check those out. And again, thank you for attending, and for those that who have registered, we will be sending you a replay and the slides within 24 hours of this webinar. So thank you, everyone.